Good evening, Louisa. Hudson. Yeah, Lou. I know you as Lou. Everyone knows you as Lou. So I'm really happy to have you on Freeflow Coffee Chats. Very excited about this because I know you've got lots of projects going on at the moment. And so I'm going to start with the first question, which is really about what makes you happy. So I know you're a real doer. I know you love life. But when are you at your happiest?
I think it's probably when I'm doing things for other people, and that sense of reward and achievement, if I've helped fix something or just help make people's day a bit easier. I get back from what I give out, and if it's a positive response or reaction, then that fills my cup.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. That's definitely how I feel about these kinds of things as well. When yeah, when you've got to get up in the morning, what gets you out of bed? What's your key motivator?
Again, I suppose other people wanting to help and not let other people down, I suppose. And I like, at the moment, every day is different, every job is different, so that motivates me, excites me. Variety is the spice of life. I like doing different things. So yeah, I think it's meeting people, seeing people, engaging with people. That's what gets me up and out.
Fantastic. When you look back on the past week, what would you say the highlights have been for you? What's been the perk of this week?
Oh, there's been a few, but with my business and a couple of the customers, it's been putting their mind at ease. They've been really stressed about things. They've been unable to get into online banking, etc. So it's been keeping them awake at night, and just having the feedback and them saying how relieved they are and how, wonderful it is that that's all been resolved. That's huge, really.
Okay, so that's going to bring me to my next question. So for our audience to understand what kinds of customers you're talking about, we're going to move on to take a look. So I'm curious to know what inspired you to go from project management, which you still keep your hand in, to setting up your own startup. Um, take a look. So maybe you can tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. So probably about 10 years ago, maybe longer actually, I was working in the NHS, and one of the favourite projects that I worked on was trying to empower mental health patients to get online and record some of their outcome measures for their mental health conditions onto a website, and it fed into their health record. And I realised at a young age there's a large cohort of people that aren't particularly that comfortable with technology. They've never had smartphones. And that was quite eye-opening for me, early to mid-20s. I think I was quite naive and just assumed everyone had evolved when, technology came on the scene. And then my granddad, who I was very close to, who I couldn't necessarily see as much as I wanted to, would often call me in distress because he'd switched his TV from AV to TV, and you know how it is. And I soon realised there's another cohort of people that perhaps have lived a perfectly good life without the everyday technology that we're used to. But then when COVID hit, it made me realise how isolated they were. And a lot of people, particularly the older generation, were isolated day to day as it is, without thinking about technology. But I think when we went into lockdown, that really highlighted it, because I myself was living alone at the time, and I had some health conditions. And I think if I hadn't have had Facebook or social media, for example, and I hadn't been able to understand how to do video calls and things like that, it would just been a different layer and level of isolation. And that's when I'd had the idea in my head that it was needed for older generations. But I think with my own health conditions and struggling to work full time again, around COVID time, it was 2020, not the best idea to start a startup then, but that's when I started to put it out there a little bit. And as you say, gradually, with a little bit of the NHS stuff alongside the business, I've just been seeing where it goes, really.
Yeah. As you've just said, tech looks really, well, their clients typically belong to a generation that hasn't grown up with technology, hasn't grown up with digital technology, and has had to deal with so many changes, in fact, over the course of their life, probably more than we have to some extent. Yes, our lives have become faster, but they've gone from handwriting everything that they did when they were at school up to, you know, an era where everything they do is now online. What would you say, for you? How do you manage to reduce their stress or to even eliminate their fear of tech? How do you do that?
I think working in the NHS has taught me to be quite patient, and I've just always been quite friendly and patient and approachable. That's something that I've always been told, really. So I'm quite good at recognizing when somebody is stressed, anxious, worried, and it's just a case of putting their mind at ease. If it's really, really overwhelming to them, saying, you know, you have a sit down here, don't worry, let me look at this is what I'm here for, and just sort of delegating and removing that stress away from them. And then if they're willing and they want to, teaching them and showing them for the future how to do it differently, or maybe things to look out for. And I think there are quite a few times where it might not necessarily go in the first time, and that's completely normal. That's perfectly normal if you've never done things before. So it's just really, patiently and calmly and slowly, and writing down instructions if it's easier for them to go through, and catering it to each person really and their needs.
Yeah, it's well, you've definitely helped me out a few times. Yeah, that enough said about that one. What do you most enjoy about your work? In general, but what do you most enjoy about it?
And meeting new people, to be honest with you. And as I say, every job's different, every house I go into is different. Meeting people, meeting their pets, hearing about their life stories, and it's so lovely. And I think after lockdown, my normal job in the NHS became very home based, and that was again quite isolating, and I wasn't getting to see people day to day. So I love going out and meeting new people, and then recognizing them and seeing them in the street and asking them how they are. And I think it's really important to build relationships, especially in communities and areas that you live in. So
Yeah, I think the fabulous thing about this is that you really do keep this local. You are known in your area, you are known in the surrounding area, and I'm sure that that is something that you're wanting to build on as well. But I think it's wonderful to have that kind of business where it really is localized, where you really immerse yourself, embed yourself in the community. That seems to be something that doesn't happen as much as, certainly as much as it used to. But I think it's a wonderful thing. And Yeah, it's a very interesting idea that you have there. I think you're doing a good job with it. What what's your vision for Look? So where do you see all this? Where do you see it going? And if you were to click your fingers and achieve your next milestone with the company, what would it be?
um I recognise and see that there's a demand for this kind of service across the country, and maybe even other countries. But whether that's for Look or perhaps even more the government, I do think there needs to be more training around the day-to-day tech. You're just expected to know how to download the GP app, the NHS app, and it connect it to your GP surgery. And these things, even for the likes of me who've worked in IT and tech for 16 years now, they're not always straightforward. It's clunky, it doesn't necessarily work the first time, and there are still people in our generation and younger who don't use tech still. They might be more tradesmen, hands-on people, and this stuff still makes them want to throw their devices out the window. So I do think, whether it's for Look or myself, that there is a huge market and there needs to be more consideration to that. I suppose bringing it back to Look, it would just be being able to do this full time, which I near enough am at the moment, and tapping into more community groups and providing it to those that perhaps can't reach it at the moment, because at the moment it's a private service and it's charged, but I would like to be able to reach people that perhaps aren't financially able to pay for tuition and things like that. So working alongside charities and more community groups and things like that, and then seeing, I suppose, if it gets to the point where I need to employ someone to help me out and cover more people, and I suppose taking it step by step, really.
Yeah, that's I think from where you're going with this, is there something that you would like to ask for right now? I mean, is there something that you would, a particular organization or charity that you would like to work with at the moment?
I'm in the process of pursuing some, you know, like the Women's Institute, things like that. There are a lot of well, they're not really companies, but charities or CICs that do great work and try and help to combat the digital inclusion projects and things like that. So yeah, again, working alongside those really. I think in the past I've been incredibly ambitious and set myself those goals and wanted to work towards them, and maybe a little bit too ambitious in my 20s, because I burnt out and struggled a lot with my health towards the end of my 20s. So I'm just, you know, this is something that I started testing the water 6 years ago. And bit by bit, where I've been capable of doing it, and I haven't been working full time in the NHS as well, just seeing where I can take it next. But I don't know if there's one in particular. I would, I suppose, like to tap into the Women's Institute. But yeah, that's the one I can think of off the top of my head, and the University of Third Age, the U3A group.
Yep, excellent. It really did make me think when you were talking about, you know, certain systems that are not easy to get into and understand, such as, you know, NHS apps and things like that. It's interesting. I mean, you know, someone might think that they're doing the wrong thing, and actually what it is that the website's gone down or something like that at the time that they're doing it, and it's just bad luck. They haven't done anything wrong. It's just technology, things that happen, and to not know that certain things can happen unexpectedly. So yeah, it just occurred to me while you were talking about it, and I thought, yeah, I mean, it's just not evident, is it?
No. And you know, I had a customer the other day bought a brand new TV and couldn't get the remote to work, and sadly it was a broken remote. And in those scenarios where we've got smart TVs now and they connect to the internet and you have to log into everything and remember a password, and they just at the first hurdle think, what am I doing wrong? And it's not always the person. And sometimes that can come in back to your question about putting their minds at ease or relieving some stress, is saying this isn't anything that you've done wrong. This is their website or this is their app, and there's a problem. But again, just being able to pick up the phone on their behalf and speak to someone where they don't feel comfortable and they don't understand it, to say something's not working, relieves some stress for them.
Yeah. Yeah, fantastic. I know that you've worked abroad. You know, you worked abroad for a certain amount of time as well. In fact, on the other side of the world. In which ways did this experience influence you, or indeed shape where you are right now?
Yeah, I think I did. As you know, I didn't go to uni. I worked my way up from a young age. I was born and bred in South London. There was a lot of opportunity to do that, even in the NHS, which I was really grateful for, and got into the project management at a young age. I then found it quite frustrating and political and very bureaucratic and a lot of red tape, and I wasn't getting that sense of achievement like we talked about at the beginning. The day-to-day motivation just wasn't there as much. And I moved to Australia rather suddenly and impulsively, and it was great out there because they had a combination of sort of public sector as well as part private funded health a health system. So it was nice to see the way that works, and I suppose there was less red tape, less stress, and you could achieve more. But I didn't do that the whole time I was out there. I was still, working behind a bar and doing hospitality and traveling and living on an island and this, that, and the other. And I think that's when I really had a think and thought, this isn't making me happy anymore. And I'd had this idea in the back of my head. This was in 2018 that I was in Australia, and thought, no, I need to give it a go. I want to try. I know there's people out there that need help, and the rate that technology is evolving is so quick. And even back then, you wouldn't have predicted that we were going to be in this time, with AI and everything like that. So I think traveling, especially independently and solo, it makes you reflect from the outside and have a look in and see perhaps where things aren't making you happy, or maybe you'd like to try a different path or an avenue. So yeah, that was quite crucial actually. And then coming back and it was COVID and thinking maybe not, but then also realizing there was a huge need for it in those times as well. So it's, yeah, there's been lots of experiences, I suppose, that has made me make the move and yeah, see where it goes.
Yeah. I mean, I can associate that as a fellow, well, I won't say traveller, but someone who's obviously lived abroad for quite a long time, long stretches. I think that the wealth of experience and experiences that you have from doing that, it's not something that you can learn in your backyard. You have to go out there and to know what that feels like.
Yeah,
I value it too.
And you're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, like no way that you could do, I suppose, in the area that you're familiar with. So yeah.
It's a strange one if you come from a big city like London or New York or wherever it is, and it is so big that there are so many just different aspects of it, but it's still not branching out of your cultural comfort zone, and you need to come away from that to actually see what that feels like. Yeah. Brilliant. So given these different experiences, I'm curious to go back a little bit and go back to the age of 11. And what did you dream of becoming back then? I mean, what did you think you were going to become when you were just before you went to secondary school? What did you see yourself as?
I always wanted to be a firefighter from the age of three or four.
That's
I
brilliant.
was obsessed, with Fireman Sam, and I was fortunate enough at nursery to be on the telly as a kid on play days, and the fire engine came and rescued our toy cat at the nursery. So I was always obsessed with the fire brigade and joining the fire service, which I did apply in London several times and never really got past the application process. That was in my early 20s. And then, as you know, in recent years, went through the application process down here in East Sussex, and got as far as the fitness test and everything like that. But sadly, because of my health conditions, decided to pull out of that. So yeah, that was the childhood dream.
Where did that passion come from, though? I mean, that's an interesting one.
I honestly think it was from Fireman Sam, and then that, being on telly at 3 or 4 years of age was huge. Seeing yourself on telly, and it was, we were on telly because the fire engine had come out, and I got to try on the uniform at I think 3 or 4. I can't remember the exact age, but it was nursery. Put the helmet on, see the truck, and it just carried on from there. I had my Playmobil fire engine. It was, the obsession began. And then there was also an incident where I maybe got my legs stuck in between bars at a leisure centre, and the fire engine had to come out. So again, they were my heroes. So yeah, that's that's what happened. Yeah.
Not stuck in a tree, stuck behind bars. I love that. Fantastic. So if you were going to meet that 11-year-old Lou who was hopefully not stuck behind bars, what advice would you give her, or what would you do differently to if you could choose again?
I don't think if I told my younger self that you would end up working in IT for 16 years, I would say, no, don't be silly. You know, IT was my least favourite subject. I really struggled at secondary school, as a lot of youngsters do. You know, didn't realise it now, but had undiagnosed ADHD, and I struggled a lot. And IT was one of the least favourite subjects. So I don't think I would believe it. I suppose, given that and how much I did struggle at school, I would tell myself not to worry and put too much pressure on myself to know in life what you want to do at that age. You know, you get to some people get to 50 and still don't really know what they want to do. The path has almost been chosen for them in some ways. So yeah, I would probably try as best as I could to say you don't have to have it all figured out at this age. And everybody's on a different path. And that's almost the beauty of life as well, really. Different pages, different chapters, different ages. You know, people start things later on in life. Some people start in uni. But yeah, I think the younger me would go, don't be silly. You know, you'd be bored. You'd be so bored working in tech. But I suppose where I've worked more on the sort of personable side of things and building relationships in anything I've done in IT or tech. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to that, working with young people, coaching young people, teenagers who clearly don't know. You know, a lot of people do not know what they want when they're at that age, and there is so much pressure. There is so much pressure on them to just focus on grades, focus on a direction, push them through the whole education system, and actually, so much about them that they need to discover on a physical level, on an emotional level. You know, they have a journey to go on that has nothing to do with grades, and that also needs to be fully explored. And I think what you're saying here is absolutely the case, that you can change your mind 100 times before you get to the age of 40, and that is okay too. It really is about where you are at the moment and focusing on what you love at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Which achievement out of everything you have achieved would you say you are the most proud of?
Gosh. I think, given how much I struggled at school and that I barely got my GCSEs, going on to succeed and be quite successful in my 20s was a huge achievement. I did, however, feel like I had I did have imposter syndrome the whole time, and thought, you know, sometimes I'd be sat in board meetings in my mid-20s thinking I've not even done my A levels, like they'll find out soon that I shouldn't be here. And I think off the back of that, in my 30s, realizing my worth a little bit more, because that's been a slow journey, even from teenage years into the 20s, thinking, you know, realizing your worth, and that you can do something, and you don't have to achieve the unachievable, unimaginable. You can just do it slowly and organically. And so ultimately, the business, I suppose, is my biggest achievement so far. Just an idea that I had 10 years ago, and suddenly I am where I am, and able to reach people that need help.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Because you've worked in a very fast-paced environment, at times stressful environment. It is the NHS, stressful project management. I've seen you during some of those periods where you've been working some very long hours, over the past few years. What would you say is your go-to strategy for managing tension and recharging for you?
For me, it was exercise and more holistic things like massaging and receiving, like having massages, and yoga and dancing and things like that, to take my mind away from the busyness. I think my ADHD is a blessing and a curse at times. It's a blessing for spinning lots of plates in my head at the same time, and that was fantastic in the height of the project management stuff that I did. I typically do more project support roles these days because I find it really hard not to burn out with that stuff, and a lot of it is out of your control. But you know, it did help me to have the brain that I do, where I'm constantly thinking of the next thing, things that could go wrong, having mitigations in place for those, and seeing risks that people didn't necessarily see. So I'm grateful for it, but equally I did initially find it quite hard to switch my brain off, and that's why exercise and movement and self-care was really important. And now I've got a healthier balance of a less stressful role in the NHS as and when I go into it, and the business is the first job I've done in a very long time that it fills my cup up and it doesn't drain, doesn't take away from me. Whereas I think all my working career really has almost sucked the life out of me a little bit. And I know there's a lot of people in the NHS that feel that way, sadly. So the business is in itself putting energy back into me as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's because you're doing what you enjoy doing, and it's come from you. That's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. That's fantastic. It's been great chatting to you. And I wish you all the best with your plans at the moment. Sounds like you're doing an absolutely fantastic job. So your customers are lucky to very, very, very lucky to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Take care, Louis.